Joining us now is the former Israeli ambassador to the United States, Michael Oren. Ambassador, this is a crisis unlike any that you and I have ever seen. I know we've seen a combat veteran, and we've seen many over the years, especially in Gaza, as well as in Lebanon. But tell me your interpretation of Blinken extending his shuttle diplomacy, getting a lot of pushback from El-Sisi in Egypt, from MBS in Saudi Arabia, pushback about the humanitarian disaster in Gaza. I know the water was supposed to start, but they don't have fuel to pump the water, so people are becoming dehydrated. There is a hospital crisis. We spoke to Doctors Without Borders. You know, the Rafah Gate isn't open yet. Egypt's being blamed for that. Everyone is blaming everyone else. What can Israel do in response to, despite that President Biden and Secretary Blinken are reiterating the strong support of the U.S. We've spoken about that, but they believe that this humanitarian crisis, the siege, has to be adjusted.
Well, welcome to our neighborhood. Yeah. I had the misfortune when I was in government, Andrea, to be actually in charge of the Gaza situation for about a year and a half, and I actually wouldn't wish this on anybody. I spent many years, as you know, studying the Middle East. Everything I learned in a classroom was completely irrelevant. I reached one conclusion, that everything we know about civilized behavior, decency, when it comes to Gaza, just throw it out the window. You're dealing with Hamas, an organization that uses children to build its tunnels. Hundreds of them die digging these tunnels. Hamas doesn't care. There's no water in Gaza because Hamas has dug up all the water pipes to use for rockets. And I was in charge of trying to bring water, proving the water in Gaza. It was almost impossible because everything we brought into Gaza was used for military purposes. There was one major crossing into Gaza. Ironically, it's called the Vineyard of Peace, Kerem Shalom. Every day, Israel was prepared to bring in 1,200 truckloads, big flat truckloads of food, medicine, anything. There was no shortage of any basic commodities in Gaza. The blockade was only about military supplies and what they call dual-use items that could be used, like an irrigation pipe that can be used to make a projectile. Hamas lowered that number to 400 because it likes to have a level of humanitarian disaster, keeps the people angry and dependent on Hamas. And with the outbreak of this war, Hamas blew up the Vineyard of Peace crossing and killed all the Israelis there. So we couldn't bring food and water across that crossing even if we wanted to. Our trucks would be under fire. And go get a truck driver to go and do that. Then there's the Egyptians. The Egyptians are extremely sensitive about any Palestinians coming through the Rafah crossing and resettling in Sinai. They adamantly refuse that. That has been their position since they were ousted from Gaza in June 1967, the Six-Day War. Back in 1979, you may remember, Andrea, that Menachem Begin tried to give Gaza back to the Egyptians, and Anwar Sadat said, no, I'm not taking that. No way. So Egyptians are even sensitive to even bringing humanitarian aid across that border. They're so scared of Palestinians moving with their radicalism, with Hamas ideas into Sinai, when Egypt has been fighting ISIS for years and losing thousands of civilians there. So it's that kind of sensitive situation. I personally, and I'm not a spokesman for the government, I hope we can find a better solution for relieving the immediate humanitarian needs, humanitarian disaster needs of the population that has moved out of the fighting areas now. I personally hope we can find a solution for that. That feeling is not shared by all Israelis. There's a lot of Israelis who feel that the population of Gaza supported Hamas, loved Hamas, voted for Hamas, and so there's not a tremendous amount of sympathy here. I feel that we should do this as the Jewish state, democratic state, and also because the president and the Secretary of State want it to help them with people maybe back in Washington who may object to some of the very bold efforts of support for Israel that they have made. They have been truly extraordinary, I want to reiterate. And then finally, just moving hundreds of thousands of Palestinians out of the way of combat, which in fact is the less humanitarian option, is not moving them out, of course, because Hamas has not only booby-trapped and wired and mined every single alley and street in Gaza, it has built countless miles of tunnels and bunkers under that. Israeli army will be fighting not just in the street, they'll be fighting under the streets. Hamas has its headquarters under hospitals, under schools. We all know this. This is as you told me I was a paratrooper once. I fought in Gaza. I will tell you, this is the ultimate nightmare for any fighting person. Ultimate nightmare. So there are no good solutions here. What I learned was everything you know about, throw it out and try somehow. I don't actually envy anybody who wants to do this. Try to enter this reality. It is a very dark and very painful, agonizing reality.
Ambassador Michael Oren, you've got it all covered. Thank you very much. Your perspective is so important. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And come